I gotta say, I've learned so much from these individuals over the last 4.5 years.
And it breaks my heart because it's so many women, and women have not been able to give themselves the permission because society doesn't give ourselves the permission to be like, actually, I want to work part-time, raise a family. Yeah, I want to find a fucking man. Yeah, I want to get married or not get married.
Like little tyrants running around, unhealed, uninitiated, that grow up into these like male bodies. And patriarchy is not only harmful to the feminine, it's actually harmful to the healthy masculine.
Similar thing, something we stated we wanted, and we have opportunities come to us and say, hey, this thing you said you wanted is here now. Do you still want it?
It's just those clips you watched, or you listened to one of the episodes. We've had many guests on outside of Monica, Dominic, and Kayvon. These conversations have been a game changer for me for the last few years. To me, every conversation I sit in, it's like being part of a coaching conversation with these individuals. It just helps me in understanding the insanity of the world. I haven't always done it alone. I had a great friend join me when we first started. My brother was the one who helped me start this journey. I think I'm all set. But before I even get ready to start recording anything, I want to share a quick story with you. What do you remember about us talking about starting a podcast in 2018?
We were novices in personal development world. Time podcasts were starting to get really hot. We just saw an opportunity to talk to a lot of really cool people that we were meeting in New York City. And we saw an opportunity to get these people that had, come to a place of health and evolution, but not talk about the highlights, talk about the lowlights, talk about what inspired them to get to that place. The love for this game tends to stem from having been in a very, very dark place. That's the stories that we desired to capture.
We stopped, and I think we stopped mostly because life kind of took over, and we took that break for about a year, I think, before. Yeah. And we jumped back in because we're like, let's do a Spartan race.
And then the world decided to burn down.
We originally started just us, but I don't remember why we started to bring people back.
It was nice talking about the Spartan, but at some point it was like we were already in the groove of training, and then at some point the race got canceled. Well, we can't just keep talking about, the extra 3 miles we're putting on every week. We got to start talking about something else.
We brought on all those folks, and then we stopped again.
I think we stopped because our lives were just going in different directions. You were starting to move up career-wise and taking on more responsibility at work. My coaching business was starting to come off the ground, and we needed to really focus on the things that were right in front of us.
And that's when I was like, I'm gonna just take the reins. Definitely miss your presence you were able to bring out from people. So it is like one of your biggest lessons from doing the whole podcast thing for 2 years in total.
I think the biggest lesson, hindsight is 2020. That was my biggest lesson, because everyone's story, just if you broke it down to its bare bones, it was all the fucking same. There might have been levels of intensity. The levels of intensity could have been different. Everyone had the same fucking story, right? They had the tragedy that stole their innocence. That tragedy forced them to either choose to go all in on themselves or go all out. They chose to go all in, and then going all in, they found light in the darkest tunnel of their lives. Oftentimes, that was not something that happened once. It happened multiple times over, and each time, greater and greater gold was found at the end of it. And I think that was the greatest thing, is realizing that if I'm ever in an abyss in my own life, that is the process of metamorphosis and alchemizing into just another level up.
I'd like to show you 3 things that I learned from podcasting in the last 4 years. As you can see, I'm doing my podcast preparation routine. Number 1 is that these things take much longer than you originally think. See, podcasts are difficult to build because most of the time, these podcast platforms don't really have a good discovery part. So nowadays, you have to utilize all kinds of social media clips in order to get yourself seen. To build an audience takes a really long time. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of great guests. Then once that continues to happen, eventually you get the big names, people that everyone knows, if you're interested in what they have to say, and that will help your podcast as well as their brand. Not every podcast that you shoot is going to be great, unfortunately. And that could be a variety of things. You and the guests just don't vibe well together. Maybe get into a little scuffle. I've seen it happen on podcasts that still get released. Or you may have audio issues and then you never find time to meet with the person again. There's so many different reasons you have guests on. So not having the right guests can be detrimental to your podcast. So research prior to shooting is so important. And usually before I reach out to a guest, before me and Jesse used to reach out to guests, we'd always do very vigorous amount of research on the person before we bring them on. And finally, shooting the podcast is just such a small part of the entire production. When it comes to production, dealing with audio can be a whole game on its own. And I'm not an audio technician. Sometimes I have to sit there and re-listen to the entire episode, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, just to make sure that the audio is proper, or at least sounds sufficient enough where my ears can hear it. It's not too loud for the person listening. Take some time. I try my best to learn from the other podcasters that I listen to. You know, I'm at 100 episodes. I listen to many podcasts throughout the week. Joe Rogan, Andrew Huberman podcast, Lex Friedman, Andrew Schultz. I try to give myself a variety of comedy, science. I love facts. I love to research things. Curious minds coming from scientists and people who are in that field kind of help me with my own production of the podcast. And I saw a tweet recently that said, most podcasts out there do not get past episode 3. And I'm on about episode 117 now, which means technically I should celebrate like 1% of all podcasts out there. I'm not at the top, nowhere near. I'm working towards getting there. And it just takes time. It takes a lot of effort. It is tiring, but I'm here for the long game to continue putting in my time before finally time will come back to me. All it takes is one very good opportunity to allow this thing to flourish. It's really all about consistency. In order for me to fulfill my goal of being the next Joe Rogan of the next generation, I need to be consistent. I need to film thousands of episodes. How will I make that happen? By just showing up, doing interviews, doing solos, doing ones with my partner, on relationships, trying to be different, but support people and help them. See, without being consistent, you won't catch a lucky break. In order for luck, kind of like a formula, in order for luck to come, you have to continue to do things. You have to continue to put out good work, whether that's luck through someone giving you the right feedback, or that's through luck through you learning how to make it better. The hardest part is really waiting. It's really not seeing the numbers you want to see with every podcast. When you're creative, it takes time, and looking at the numbers is just not going to help me right now. What I need to focus on is putting out the content. Still pay attention to numbers, don't get me wrong, because I want to see what works so I can provide more of that value. I take a little look at it maybe once or twice a month, and then I go from there. And when it comes to podcasts, the best part is, even if it doesn't get big, I got to talk to amazing individuals and learn from them and provide them a platform to talk. They're so into the work, they talk about what they do in different ways and some questions that can really make them think, which is why my podcast is called the Panda Podcast.